linking words. This is another one of those sessions which will teach you some very important fundamentals for your writing, especially essay writing. In essay writing, linking words, they're very important. They are often referred to as transition words or phrases, and these words, they help you to connect ideas, sentences, and paragraphs so that when somebody is reading it, they feel that as if one thing is leading to another. They serve various functions. For example, there are linking words which are used to show cause and effects, which are used to contrast ideas, to give examples, to provide more information. As we have discussed in the writing essay lectures, one of your goals, the main goal when you're writing something, especially academic writing, is you have to do it in a well structured manner so that each sentence should be linked to another sentence. You have to show what's the thought process that's gone behind your writing, coming up with that. So you should not, your writing should not look like that you're jumping from one point to another, you're writing randomly. So you introduce an idea, then you give an example, you add more information. Then in the next paragraph, you probably have an idea which is in contrast to the previous idea. Or if the previous idea was the cause, then the next idea is effect, or you are adding more information. So then you have to use those correct linking words in the beginning. And I would go on to say that if you don't use the proper linking words, then it's very difficult, almost impossible to get full marks in essay writing. So a good essay, academic essay, will always have the appropriate linking words used in the beginning of the paragraphs or when you are linking sentences at all the right places. And in this session, we'll look at what are these different linking words that we can use, what's their purpose, in which situation we have to use them, and we'll also look at some examples. So the very first one is addition. So let's say there's an essay about the advantages of living in a big city. And you've started a paragraph, you've written one point in it, you've given one advantage, then you want to write another advantage. And then in the next paragraph, you want to write two more advantages. So using these type of addition linking words are very important. They are to be used in that situation. So used to add information that emphasizes what has already been said. So you first make a point, and then from second point onwards, you are adding more to it. So that's where you will use the linking words. So first linking word that you can use is moreover. So an example, the study confirms the medication's effectiveness. Moreover, it shows potential benefits in treating related conditions. So they've first said what's the one good thing about the new medication or the medicine, and then adding to it, they've written about the potential benefits in treating related conditions. Similar to moreover, you can also use furthermore. So they're quite similar. The city must address its growing population. And another thing that they should do, furthermore, so means more than this, furthermore, after this, they should also improvements in public transportation are needed. So you should do this, and furthermore, you should do this. Now, let's say if you write this in this way, the city must address its growing population. Moreover, improvements in public transportation are needed. So moreover means the next point is sort of on top of that, more important, right? It has more weight than this. But furthermore, next to this, okay, you do this, but that's not enough. Furthermore, you have to do this. The next, in addition, so this is the simplest. In addition to reducing pollution, cycling to work provides excellent physical exercise. In this case, there's no, as such, precedence or weightage between what comes first, what comes afterwards. It's pretty much the pieces of information, they are equal in weight. So reducing pollution and physical exercise, those, the two benefits of cycling, they're almost equal. You could have also written, in addition to providing physical exercise, cycling to work reduces pollution. They're kind of similar things. So that's when we use addition, when we are making similar points, telling similar benefits. Moreover is when one is at a higher level. Furthermore is when you need more steps. So after this, there's more that has to be done. All right. So that's how you use these three linking words in scenarios where you need to add or where you need to emphasize, put more emphasis on a point that has already been stated. The next linking word, when you want to show contrast. So the first and probably the most common is however. So you mention a point previously and then you want to show a contrast or an exception to that. For example, the project was a success. However, it went significantly over budget. So means it was a success, but yeah, there was one little exception there that it went significantly over budget. So that's when you use however. On the other hand is another linking word or phrase that you use. This is used when you want to put together a completely opposing or different viewpoints. For example, you wanted to say project A was a success. On the other hand, project B was a huge failure. So then it's a direct comparison, a different viewpoint. So you can use, on the other hand, another example. Some argue that technology simplifies life. On the other hand, others believe it makes life more complicated. So again, a different viewpoint, something which is on the opposite end. That's when you use on the other hand. So you usually use the contrast keywords. You use them when you're talking about advantages, disadvantages in an essay, agree, disagree type of essay. That's when these contrast keywords, they are very important. Next one, nevertheless. So indicates a contrast to what has been previously stated, suggesting something surprising or against the previous statement. So this is also a contrast. It's like saying that this happened, but still this other thing could happen nevertheless. Means it was not expected because what you mentioned in the first sentence, but something surprising, the other thing, it could still happen. So when that relation you have to show, you will use nevertheless. So the hike was challenging. Nevertheless, we reached the summit before noon. Means it wasn't expected that because the hike was challenging, it wasn't expected that we'll reach the summit before noon. But nevertheless, we reached the summit before noon. So it was something surprising and it's a contrast. So we use nevertheless. Now, another simple one is just in contrast. So it highlights a stark difference between two things. In contrast to the bustling city, the countryside offers a peaceful retreat. So now this is similar to, on the other hand, when you're just pointing out some kind of a difference between two things. But when you want to show a totally opposing point of view or a different viewpoint, then it's preferred to use on the other hand. Next, we have linking words for cause and effect. Therefore, shows the effect or result of a given cause. He did not study for the exam, therefore he did not pass. So this is also something that you can use in essays. So when you are writing a point and then you have another point in mind, which is the effect of the previous point, you can use therefore. Consequently, similar to therefore, it indicates the result following a cause. The company failed to invest in new technology. Consequently, it lost its competitive edge. So, for example, if there's an essay related to housing crisis in big cities, you can say that the governments failed to invest in social housing. Consequently, the homelessness has increased in recent years. So, again, similar to therefore, it indicates the result following a cause. As a result, again, very similar. It rained heavily throughout the night. As a result, the baseball game was postponed. Usually, therefore, and consequently, that's what I would recommend that you try to use more in cause and effect situations. And as a result, you can probably leave it because mostly in your writing task, there'll be 2 or 3 opportunities to use this type of linking word because you might only have one essay or 2 essays. So it's better to use more formal, therefore, and consequently. Finally, we also have hence. A logical conclusion, all flights were cancelled due to the storm, hence we decided to take the train. But as I said earlier, try to focus more on, just keep therefore and consequently in mind. It will keep your writing simpler. No need to confuse yourself with having too many options. Once you're done with PTE, you'll still be writing reports and assignments, making presentations at work. So knowing these other things will be useful, but for PTE for now, focus on the first two. Next, when we have to do a comparison. So similarly indicates that two or more things are alike. The economic policies of country A of Australia have boosted its economy. Similarly, New Zealand has seen growth by adopting related measures. Now, to show that the two things are alike, are related. So again, sometimes you can just add information. You can say in addition, if the points are similar. But if you find a more appropriate relationship, that what I'm trying to show is that these two things, they are similar, then use the linking word which is most appropriate. Okay. Next, likewise, also used to show similarity or agreement. The manager praised your team's hard work. Likewise, the CEO acknowledged their dedication. And you also have in the same way. But here again, I will advise you to focus only on similarly. Just stick to that in your essays. Another very important and common linking word when you have to show the sequence or the order. And I'm sure you have seen this firstly, secondly, finally. So that is what those sequence or the order linking words are. Firstly, secondly, finally, introduce items in a list or a sequence. Firstly, we'll review the reports. Secondly, we'll discuss the implications. Finally, we'll outline the next steps. So if you're writing an essay and you're building a case that why you support something, why you're in agreement, why you're in disagreement, and you have clear-cut reasons for that. First reason is this, secondly this, and finally this is why I think so. So you can use these sequence linking words there. Another, initially, when you're talking about the first event, initially the project faced many obstacles, but eventually we found viable situations. So if you can find situations in which you can use initially and eventually together, it will give a lot of weight to your sentence. Subsequently, something follows. The company launched its new product. Subsequently, sales increased dramatically. So that is also, to show how things happened in an order, that they followed a sequence. First something happened, and then something followed that. Previously refers to something that happened before the crucial point in time. Most of the times you will use firstly, secondly, finally, and subsequently. Okay, initially and previously, they're good to know, but focus on firstly, secondly, finally, and subsequently. Now you might ask, can I also write thirdly, fourthly? Maybe, yeah, you can do that, but there's a word limit and you only need to write around 250 words, and that will make a good essay. And to meet that 250 words requirement, it's enough if you have 1, 2, and 3 points. So firstly, secondly, finally is enough for the purpose here. Another very important point is when you have to give an illustration or example. So we often say that in writing, when you're writing an essay, you introduce a topic, then you expand on that topic, support it with arguments, and then give an example. So the simplest way of doing that is with using for example. So many countries have implemented renewable energy sources. For example, Germany has made significant investments in solar power. Also, you can use for instance. For instance, now in the previous sentence, you could have used for instance instead of for example. And then we also have including. Several countries, including France and Spain, have banned this substance. It's a way of giving an example that of several countries, and an example of them is France and Spain. And finally, we have such as introduces one or more examples related to the topic. Renewable energy sources such as wind and solar are becoming more cost effective. So such as and including, yes, within a sentence, if you want to include something, they make sense. But as a separate sentence for giving an example, I would suggest you use for instance. So even you can use both for example and for instance, but I would say using for instance, that's a better choice. Emphasis. Now this is very important when you want to emphasize a point or statement that this is key information. So indeed, the results are indeed remarkable. Significantly indicates that something is important or noteworthy. The new policy has significantly reduced emissions. So between linking the two concepts, that the new policy and something about that, what it has done, reduced emissions. So that's why we use significantly to put that emphasis. And importantly, the new policy will take effect immediately. Out of these here, and there's also especially, but out of these here, I will say significantly is the most important. So try to use that in your essays wherever it makes sense. So when you want to show that this point, it's special, it has had an impact, but the impact is big, has been big. So then use the word significantly. Summary and conclusion. When we are completing our essay, the last paragraph is about making a summary or a conclusion. And also in describe image questions, in lecture questions, we say that you should try to close your response by making a conclusion or an overall observation. So it will help you there. In conclusion, the simple one, in conclusion, the data supports the hypothesis that sleep quality affects cognitive function. So if this was an image, you could have said, in conclusion, the graph shows the link between sleep quality and cognitive function. Then you can also use to summarize, very useful in essays. And just like in conclusion, we also have to conclude. So pretty much the same. You can use this in writing, but also useful in spoken responses, because again, there the expectation is that you will present a well-structured response. So that's about summary and conclusion. We have seen a number of linking words in various different categories, and we also saw what are the example scenarios in which we can use. So while predominantly this is useful for writing, but it also makes your speech much better.